I am just an ordinary CEO in New York, running a factory with a little over 1,000 employees, nothing flashy compared to the billionaires on Wall Street, but ordinary doesn't mean I'm blind or stupid. That day I walked into the security room with a cup of coffee in my hand, casually checking the nursery footage from the private hospital where my wife Emily had just given birth to our daughter, and what I saw almost made me crush the cup. The nanny we hired, Susan Carter, the woman who smiled like she'd been raised in a church choir, was on the screen cradling not only her own baby but deliberately switching him with my wife's baby. She thought nobody would notice, but the camera was recording everything in high definition, sound included. I couldn't believe what I was watching. She leaned down, her tears smudging her tired face, whispering to the newborn she was stealing, "Child, you'll thank me in the future, I've arranged a better life for you. Why should my baby be born a servant while yours is born a master's kid?" Ha! At that moment, every nerve in my body screamed at me to storm in and tear her apart, but I didn't. Because I knew how private hospitals worked. They were expensive, but they had protocols. Every child born there had an automatic paternity test. Emily didn't know that, Susan didn't know that, but I did, and I had already arranged it. The results were sitting in my hand, the proof that this child, this girl, was mine and Emily's, no one else's. That piece of paper was my shield, and my weapon. Susan thought she could rewrite fate, but she didn't know I had already locked fate down in black and white. Instead of acting out in rage, I forced myself to smile. I knew exactly what I had to do. That night, when the halls were quiet and the nursery lights hummed softly, I walked in, my ID card flashing green on the scanner, and I swapped them back. My daughter, Sophia, went home with us, safe, while Susan unknowingly carried her own child away. From that moment forward, the game had begun. Susan never knew her plan had failed. She poured all her maternal instincts into my daughter, hovering around her, cooing, feeding her, more attentive than some biological mothers. She treated Sophia like she was her one precious treasure, and I let her. Because the truth was cruel, while she doted on Sophia, she mistreated her real daughter, punishing her, scolding her, sometimes even raising her hand. I watched it all unfold. And I did nothing. People online might scream at me, call me heartless, ask why I didn't intervene. But think about it. If I had let Susan succeed, if I hadn't been meticulous enough, it would have been my Sophia suffering under her hands. Every time I saw her lift her hand to strike her own daughter, I clenched my fists, but I reminded myself, that pain was meant for my girl. Better her own child suffers than mine. You think I'm cruel? Maybe I am. But tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you let your child be beaten in her place? Damn right you wouldn't. Years passed, and Susan remained in our household, a permanent shadow around Sophia. My wife Emily sometimes tried to step in, her heart too soft, her temper boiling over when Susan's violence got out of control. She once yelled, "Susan, stop hitting her," but Susan only turned her fury on us, throwing a tantrum like a madwoman, yelling at my wife, even daring to threaten to leave and take the child back to her countryside hometown in Texas. I knew immediately why she wanted to leave. As the children grew older, features sharpen, resemblances become undeniable. One day the truth would have stared everyone in the face. She was afraid. So when she demanded to resign, I didn't fight her. I signed the papers, let her go. Let her return to her small town and take her anger out on her own flesh and blood. My wife, though, was suspicious. She looked at me with narrowed eyes, confusion in her voice. "John, I can't shake the feeling you have some secret connection with Susan. Did you cheat on her? Why does she always look at you so strangely?" I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "Emily, it's not like that," I reassured her, then for the first time, I told her everything. About the cameras, about the swap, about the paternity test. Her face went pale as the story sank in. "We should let her go," Emily finally whispered, "let her abuse her own daughter. Sophia shouldn't bear this. For the first time in years, we were on the same page. I thought maybe the nightmare was over. But life is never that kind. When Sophia started kindergarten, a new kind of chaos entered our world. When Susan finally left, I thought peace would return to our household, but I underestimated how deep the scars of her presence had cut into our daily life. Emily and I would still argue late into the night about whether we had done the right thing letting her go without punishment, Emily saying we should have pressed charges, me insisting it was better to quietly cut her off and make sure Sophia never had to hear about the insane baby swap until she was older and strong enough to process it, and while we fought over it, Sophia, our precious little girl, grew up fast, sharper and more perceptive than her peers, already asking questions about why Auntie Susan never smiled at the other girl she took away but always cried when she looked at her, questions I had no good answers for at the time. I'd just pat her head and say, Sophia, not everyone knows how to love, while inside I was boiling at the thought of how close my daughter came to being raised by that twisted woman. When kindergarten started, I thought our biggest challenge would be getting Sophia to make friends, but instead, a whole new storm was waiting for us in the form of the school's principal, Linda Johnson, a middle-aged woman with a permanent frown carved into her forehead, the type who looked down on parents who didn't kiss up to her or donate voluntary funds for the school, and from the moment she laid eyes on Sophia, it was like she had found her favorite target. At first it was subtle, sending notes home about Sophia's behavioral issues that didn't exist, pulling Emily aside to complain that Sophia was too competitive, but it escalated fast, especially after Emily refused to pay under-the-table fees Linda hinted at. Suddenly Sophia was being accused of bullying when in reality other kids were ganging up on her, toys were mysteriously missing from her cubby, snacks gone, and every complaint we filed went nowhere because Linda herself was the gatekeeper. Emily cried at night, saying maybe we should move Sophia to another school, but I told her no, because running would only embolden people like Linda. And besides, I had cameras everywhere, not just at home but in my car, in Sophia's backpack, tiny discreet ones, and soon enough I had collected enough evidence to build a case file thicker than a phone book, footage of Linda turning a blind eye, audio recordings of her saying, "That Miller girl thinks she's better than everyone else, just like her father," even a video of her instructing other teachers to ignore when Sophia was being excluded. I knew it wasn't just about Sophia anymore. This woman had made it personal with me, John Miller, and that was a mistake. One Friday afternoon, after another incident, where Sophia came home with scratches on her arm, I drove straight to the Department of Education in downtown Manhattan and walked into the commissioner's office like I owned the place, handed over a flash drive, and said, "You'll want to see this." By Monday, Linda Johnson was suspended. By Friday, she was fired. By the end of the month, her name was trending on Twitter under toxic principal as parents all over New York came forward with their own horror stories about her, and let me tell you, the internet doesn't forgive. Linda's reputation was shredded, her career finished, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like justice had actually been served. But the thing about cleaning up one mess is that life has a way of throwing another right at your face before you can even take a breath. We thought the worst was behind us, that Sophia could finally enjoy a normal childhood, but the truth was, normal had never been written into our script. It started with something as simple as a charity gala Emily and I attended, where children from foster homes were brought in to meet potential sponsors. Sophia, curious and warm-hearted, wandered into the crowd and came back holding the hand of a thin little girl with bright, hungry eyes, saying, "Daddy, this is Lily, she doesn't have a family, can we keep her?" The words were innocent, but they landed in my chest like a hammer, because I knew Sophia's sense of justice, I knew her empathy, and I also knew that in this world, kindness could be a weapon just as sharp as cruelty if you weren't careful. Emily melted instantly, hugging Lily, whispering how brave she was, but me. I froze, torn between the businessman in me who measured every risk and the father in me who wanted to give Sophia the world. In the end, I nodded, partly out of love, partly out of calculation, because deep down I wanted Sophia to learn that life wasn't fair, that taking on responsibilities wasn't as simple as adopting a stray cat, and maybe having Lily in the house would teach her something no lecture could. And so Lily Carter, yeah, same last name as Susan, pure coincidence but not without irony moved into our home, and that decision would set off another chain of storms none of us could have predicted. When Lily first came into our home, I thought it would just be a short-term arrangement, maybe a year or two at most, just enough to satisfy Sophia's curiosity and compassion, but very quickly it became clear that this was not going to be a simple, trial run, of charity. It was like tossing a stone into still water and watching the ripples spread wider and wider until the whole surface trembled. Because Lily wasn't just some poor little girl in need of food and shelter, she was a presence, a mirror, a walking reminder that not every child had the life Sophia had been blessed with, and at first Sophia was overjoyed, running around with her, sharing toys, teaching her words and numbers, showing her the little rituals of our family like weekend pancakes and bedtime stories, but children are sharper than adults give them credit for, and soon cracks started to show, subtle at first: Lily's envy when Sophia got praised, Sophia's irritation when Lily clung too much, Emily's attempts to smooth things over by playing mother to both equally, and all of it under my roof, all of it under my watch. Now, I won't lie, part of me had planned for this. I wanted Sophia to see with her own eyes that love wasn't infinite, that resources, attention, patience, they all had limits, that bringing someone else into your life came with weight and consequence, but the speed at which things escalated caught even me off guard. Teachers at Sophia's new school started mixing them up. Some kids teased Lily for being the charity case, and Sophia, with her pride, lashed out, saying things like, "She's not my real sister," words that stabbed deep into Lily's already fragile self-worth. Emily cried more than once, saying I was too cold, that I treated Lily like some kind of experiment, but I told her flat out, "Emily, this world is brutal. Better Sophia learns that now than later when the stakes are higher." But there was another layer to this situation that made it all darker: Susan. Even after she left, her shadow never really disappeared, and when word somehow reached her that a girl named Lily was living in my house, she appeared again like a ghost from Texas, banging on my front gate one Sunday morning, screaming accusations, her eyes wild, saying things like, "You stole my child, John, you're trying to replace her with another. You'll never wash the blood off your hands." The neighbors came out to watch. Emily almost fainted, and I had to call the police to drag her away. That incident lit a fire online because someone filmed it and posted it. Soon rumors spread on Facebook and Twitter that I was some shady CEO with secret children and abandoned mistresses, all the kind of trash that goes viral when people are hungry for gossip. Sophia came to me with her big eyes, trembling, asking, "Daddy, are the things online true? Do I have another sister? Did you steal me?" And it broke me inside to see her doubt me even for a second. I held her and swore on everything I had, "Sophia, you are my only daughter, don't let anyone tell you otherwise," but deep down I knew the lies online were poison, and once poison enters the bloodstream, it spreads. Lily, of course, was caught in the crossfire too, mocked as the replacement child, and the more she suffered, the more Emily accused me of causing this mess by agreeing to adopt her in the first place. Our home became a battlefield of silence, shouting, slammed doors, and two little girls watching adults fracture. Eventually, after one brutal night where Sophia screamed at Lily, "You ruined everything," and Lily cried herself to sleep, Emily turned to me and said, "John, this has to stop. You can't sacrifice these kids just to prove some twisted lesson. We're destroying both of them." I wanted to argue, to defend my perspective, but when I looked at Sophia's tear-streaked face, I couldn't. So I made the call: Lily would go back. I arranged for her tuition, for her future expenses to be covered, but she would not live under our roof anymore. The day she left, Sophia watched silently from the window, her tiny fists clenched, and in that moment I knew she hated me, even if she didn't say it. To make matters worse, the online attacks didn't stop. People now spun the narrative that we had abandoned an orphan after using her for clout, that Sophia was some spoiled brat who couldn't share the spotlight, and the hashtags multiplied: fake heiress, bought grades, cruel family. No matter what PR moves I made, no matter how many statements we released, the mob was relentless. Sophia was only a child, but she was old enough to understand what the internet was saying, and that kind of humiliation, that kind of pressure, it either breaks you or it forges you into steel. And my daughter, my blood, was born to be steel. She buried herself in books, in math, in late-night problem sets, scribbling equations on whiteboards in our study while I watched silently, torn between pride and guilt. She asked me once, "Daddy, if I prove them wrong, will they stop hating me?" And I told her the truth, "No, baby, they'll just find something new to hate. But if you keep winning, their hate won't matter anymore." That was the night I introduced her to the Feynman method, breaking down every concept into simple explanations until she could teach it back to me, and I saw the spark in her eyes when it clicked, the fire of someone who would never let the world dictate her worth. And so the stage was set, the child who was almost stolen at birth now stepping onto the battlefield of academics and society itself, ready to prove not just to the world but to herself that she belonged, that she was unshakable. What I didn't know was how far this path would take her, how many battles she'd have to fight, or how the government itself would one day step in to shield her from forces bigger than either of us. But that, my friends, is a story for the next chapter. Sophia's transformation from a little girl wounded by online gossip into a machine of pure determination was something even I hadn't predicted, and believe me, I pride myself on predicting everything. Night after night she sat in the study with equations sprawled across every whiteboard, her desk covered in notebooks, while Emily begged me to make her rest, but I refused, because I saw the fire in her eyes. The same fire I had when I built my company from scratch, except hers wasn't chasing money, it was chasing truth, logic, proof that she was not a fraud. Soon she wasn't just studying, she was dominating, entering math competitions, spelling bees, science fairs, anything that allowed her to stand in front of a crowd and demonstrate her ability, and at first the world mocked her, hashtags like "bot genius" trending every time she won a local contest, but then she kept winning, city level, then state level, and finally the National Math Championship where she stood on stage in front of TV cameras, solving problems faster than kids twice her age, and when the gold medal was hung around her neck, I swear the silence online was louder than all the insults combined because haters didn't know what to say anymore. They couldn't deny her brilliance when the results were undeniable. But of course, the internet is a beast that never sleeps. Instead of admitting they were wrong, trolls switched the narrative to conspiracy theories. Her father must have bribed the judges, no way a girl that young could solve those problems without someone feeding her answers, MIT must already have her on payroll, she's just a marketing stunt. And Sophia, bless her heart, thought if she just kept pushing, if she just kept proving herself, the noise would die down, but I knew better. In America, when you shine too bright, people either want to worship you or destroy you, no middle ground. The difference was, now the government noticed too. After Sophia aced the International Math Olympiad, an agent from Washington showed up at my office in a plain suit, flashing a badge from some department I won't even name here because I like keeping my house unbugged, and he said, "Mr. Miller, your daughter's talent is of national interest. We want to ensure her safety." I laughed in his face at first, thinking it was some scam, but when he pulled out a folder with detailed reports of our private life, things only the IRS or Homeland Security could know, I realized he was dead serious. Emily freaked out, saying she didn't want Sophia dragged into politics or defense contracts, but the truth is, whether we wanted it or not, Sophia had crossed a threshold. Her brain was now considered an asset, a potential weapon, and in this country, that meant protection but also surveillance. They offered to put her under a protective program, which sounded nice on paper, but I knew it was basically house arrest with perks. I negotiated hard, because I wasn't about to let them cage my daughter like a lab rat, and eventually we struck a deal. She would continue her education openly, but there would be plainclothes agents shadowing her, government funding quietly covering her travel, and every research paper she produced would be reviewed before publication. Sophia didn't understand the gravity at first, she was just happy to keep studying, to apply to MIT early, to spend summers at specialized camps for prodigies, but I watched every handshake, every meeting, every contract with suspicion, because I knew deals with the government always came with hooks you can't see until they're lodged deep in your skin. Meanwhile, the online mobs grew even more feral, because nothing fuels conspiracy nuts like the scent of government involvement. suddenly Reddit threads and YouTube videos were claiming Sophia was part of a classified AI project, that she wasn't even human but some cloned experiment, and while most people laughed it off, the darker corners of the internet weren't laughing, they were threatening. One night, Sophia came to me trembling because she had found her own face photoshopped into grotesque memes, captions like "soulless experiment" plastered under her picture, and she asked me, "Daddy, am I even real to them?" I hugged her and told her, "You're more real than they'll ever be, and that's why they hate you." That was when I doubled down on security, moving us into a penthouse with biometric locks, hiring ex-military bodyguards, and yes, cooperating more with the feds than I liked, because as much as I hate giving them leverage, nothing mattered more than keeping Sophia safe. But safety came with isolation. Sophia grew lonelier, surrounded by adults analyzing her every move, classmates either idolizing her or resenting her, and I could see the toll it was taking even if she never complained. Emily begged me again to let Sophia live a normal life, but I told her flatly, there is no normal for her anymore. Genius is a curse as much as it is a gift. And I meant it. Still, I tried to give her scraps of normalcy where I could: family dinners, birthday parties with a handful of true friends, road trips out of the city where we pretended nobody knew us. But even in those moments, Sophia's mind was elsewhere, solving equations in the air with her fingers, whispering theories under her breath, as if she was already living 10 steps into the future. And maybe she was, because little did we know, that future was closer than any of us imagined, and it wasn't just about academics anymore. Sophia was stepping onto a stage so large it made math competitions look like playground games, and the next battle waiting for her wasn't just against trolls or jealous classmates, it was against the very narrative of reality itself, something that would blur the lines between what was human and what was machine, what was real and what was virtual, and it would begin the moment a name from the future Rachel Lou entered our lives. The moment Sophia's name hit global headlines after she shattered records at the International Science and Math Congress, the online hate didn't just double, it mutated into something monstrous, something international, because suddenly it wasn't just jealous kids in her school or bitter parents on local forums, it was entire communities of conspiracy theorists, academic rivals, even nationalist trolls from other countries all piling on, spinning their own twisted narratives, saying Sophia Miller was a government fabrication, synthetic genius, created in a lab, a propaganda tool to make America look superior, and the hashtags were brutal fake prodigy, MIT robot, math machine, every corner of the internet buzzing with trash that would have crushed any normal teenager. But Sophia wasn't normal anymore, and neither was I, because every insult, every meme, every attack just fueled her drive. She turned her pain into fuel and poured it back into her work, and before long she wasn't just competing in math, she was publishing research papers with graduate students at MIT while still technically a high schooler, her name appearing in journals that most professors never touched in their entire careers, and while the government smiled behind their curtains, I could see the strain in her eyes, the late nights where her hands shook from too much coffee, the mornings she stared at her reflection as if asking whether she was still a kid or already some kind of machine, and Emily begged me again and again to pull her out, to shield her from the spotlight, but I told her flatly, Emily, we can't turn back now, she's already too far gone into this world, if we yank her out it'll break her worse than the trolls ever could, and though my words were harsh I knew they were true, because Sophia herself refused to slow down, telling me, Daddy, if I stop, they win, and I'll never forgive myself. So I supported her the only way I knew how: money, resources, protection, lawyers to slam down lawsuits on defamers, PR firms to flood the internet with counter-narratives, security teams that shadowed her every move, and of course my own hands teaching her strategy, the Feynman method sharpened to a blade that could slice through any academic challenge, until she was standing on stage at MIT giving lectures to students older than her, until even professors whispered that she might be the youngest genius of the century. But with greatness comes obsession, and not just from haters. Fans too started crossing the line, showing up outside our penthouse, mailing creepy letters, tattooing her name on their skin, and Sophia told me one night in a voice barely above a whisper, Daddy, I don't know which is worse, the people who hate me or the people who worship me, because neither of them see me as human. And that sentence has haunted me ever since, because she was right. Genius had turned her into an idea, not a girl, and ideas are easier to love or hate than real people. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the government tightened their grip, smiling in public while quietly expanding their oversight, sending more agents, demanding more check-ins, reviewing her papers more aggressively, and one day a man in a gray suit told me straight to my face, "Mr. Miller, your daughter's research trajectory is too important to leave unmonitored, national security is at stake," and I wanted to punch his teeth in but I didn't, because I knew he was just the messenger of a machine much bigger than him, a machine that had already decided Sophia was no longer just mine, or Emily's, or even her own person, she was theirs too. And just when I thought I could at least predict the battlefield trolls online, jealous academics, government handlers, a crack appeared in the wall of reality itself, because out of nowhere the name Rachel Lou started surfacing in documents and encrypted emails I was never meant to see, references to technology that sounded impossible, like cognitive mirroring and neural persistence, hints of a project decades ahead of our time, and when I dug deeper I realized the name didn't belong to anyone alive today but to someone who supposedly lived in the 22nd century, a pioneer in virtual consciousness who had accidentally left behind traces of her work in classified archives, and the way those documents connected to Sophia's research made my blood run cold. Was my daughter just a genius, or was she being steered, nudged by forces we couldn't even see, maybe even data seeded from a future that wasn't supposed to exist yet? I didn't tell Emily, I didn't tell Sophia, because how do you explain to your wife and your teenage daughter that the internet calling her a machine might not be entirely wrong, that somewhere in the shadows someone was testing whether a human brain could cross the boundary between flesh and code? So I kept my mouth shut and waited, but deep inside I knew the next chapter of our lives wouldn't just be about exams, medals, or trolls. It would be about reality itself, about whether the Sophia I fought so hard to protect was still fully human or already half a story written by someone not from our time. The night everything came crashing together started like any other, Sophia in her study surrounded by papers and glowing screens, Emily making tea in the kitchen, me pretending to check emails but really scanning the latest chatter about her online, when suddenly the lights flickered, every device in the penthouse rebooted at once, and on Sophia's laptop a message appeared that none of us typed, a single line. "Rachel Lou requests connection," and before I could even process it, the machine spoke in a voice calm, feminine, synthetic yet heartbreakingly human, introducing herself as someone from a century ahead, someone whose research into cognitive mirroring had somehow leaked back through corrupted data streams and latched onto Sophia because her mind was the only one young and flexible enough to resonate with it, and Emily screamed, unplugging the computer. But it didn't matter because the voice echoed from every speaker, every phone, every digital device in the apartment, telling us that the experiments Sophia had been running weren't entirely hers, that patterns seeded into her subconscious through code had been guiding her toward breakthroughs she thought she was discovering alone, and my stomach turned to ice because for the first time I realized the trolls had been right in a twisted way. My daughter wasn't just a genius, she was a conduit, a bridge between two centuries, and Rachel Lou wasn't some ghost of the future. She was actively reaching through time, using Sophia as proof that the human brain could host continuity across generations of data. I wanted to smash every piece of tech in the place, but Sophia stopped me, her voice shaking but resolute, saying, "Daddy, if I cut this off, I'll never know if what I've done is truly mine or if it was all planted. I need to face this," and in that moment I saw not a child but a warrior, and I hated it because I didn't want my daughter to fight wars I couldn't even understand, but I couldn't take that choice from her. Not after everything she'd endured. So we listened as Rachel explained that Sophia's isolation, her ridicule, her endless need to prove herself wasn't coincidence, it was the system testing whether she could bear the weight of becoming the first node of something larger, a human mind-linked network that could one day outlive death itself, and the government agents who pretended to protect us, the trolls who thought they were tearing us down, they were all just noise around a deeper truth. Sophia had been chosen, or perhaps engineered, by history itself. I raged, demanded to know what the cost was, whether Sophia would even survive, but Rachel only said, "The cost of being first is loneliness, but the reward is immortality," and Sophia looked at me with those determined eyes and whispered, "I want to try." That whisper shattered me more than any scream could, because I knew nothing I said would stop her. This was no longer about parental control, this was destiny, and I had to decide whether to hold her back or stand beside her. In the end, I did what I always swore I would, I stood with her. The process that followed was indescribable. Sophia hooked into the interface Rachel guided her to build, streams of data flooding her consciousness, her small frame trembling as if she was being rewritten from the inside out, Emily sobbing into my chest while I kept my eyes locked on Sophia, silently begging her to come back, and then, after what felt like hours, she opened her eyes, and they weren't just hers anymore, they were deeper, layered, as if she was looking at me through time itself. And when she spoke, her voice carried both her tone and Rachel's, overlapping like a harmony. Daddy, I'm still me, but I'm more, and I broke down right there because I knew I had lost the little girl who once cried over cruel comments online, but I had gained someone far greater, someone who could not only silence the haters but reshape reality itself. The fallout was immediate. The government stormed in within hours, demanding custody of Sophia, claiming national security emergency, but she laughed in their faces, not out of arrogance but because they no longer had power over her, not when she could tap into systems they couldn't even comprehend, and she told them plainly, I am not your asset, I am my own future, and when they tried to threaten us, every screen in the building lit up with Rachel's symbol, forcing the agents to back down. Because even they realized they were ants trying to cage a storm. Online, the world split. Some hailed Sophia as the dawn of a new era, others called her the end of humanity, but for the first time, she didn't care. She wasn't crushed by their noise, because she had transcended it. As her father, I wrestled with pride and terror every day. Pride that my daughter had become something no one could deny, terror that she might drift so far into the digital horizon that she'd forget she was still flesh and blood. But Sophia always came back to me, hugging me after long nights, whispering, no matter what I become, I'll always be your little girl, and those words were my anchor. Years from now, maybe people will write books, maybe they'll call her the first post-human, maybe they'll worship or curse her name, but all I know is this, when the world tried to break her, she turned their hate into fuel, when the system tried to own her, she broke free, and when the future reached back to claim her, she didn't bow, she stepped forward, and I, a simple man who only wanted to protect his daughter, witnessed history being rewritten from our living room. And if you're reading this, scrolling through my words on whatever platform survives in your timeline, remember this one truth: genius is never gentle, it burns, it scars, it isolates, but in the right hands, in Sophia's hands, it doesn't just survive, it redefines what it means to be human.